Hello, you lovely lot. It's time for a new episode of the podcast series. And this week, it's with artist Hannah Shergold.
It's not irregular that I kind of sit down and I think, am I bitten off more than I can chew? And the answer is actually usually yes. It's just that you kind of muddle through it somehow. I find that I would rather take a massive bite and work out how to chew it than take a nibble and regret that I wasn't fulfilled.
Hannah is probably one of the most interesting people I have interviewed on this podcast series. She graduated from Cambridge University as a vet, she's become an accomplished sculptor, then she joined the army as a Lynx pilot and is now an accomplished artist who starred in Sky's Arts Portrait Artist of the Year. And she's painted Prince Harry and David Beckham, to name a few. This episode is a brilliant one if you are looking for the inspiration to change direction. But just before we start the interview with Hannah, I want to let you know all about the sponsors of this series, the Royal British Legion. The Royal British Legion can offer you financial support, whether it's helping you manage your debt, setting up a new home or business, or just checking you and your family are getting the benefits you're entitled to. They have got your back. Go and check out the information on their website where you can find even more support. And now onto the brilliant episode with the fascinating Hannah Shergold. Hello, Hannah. I am so excited to talk to you today. I think you're probably one of my guests who has taken the most exciting and roundabout way to end up where you are, but it's very exciting and I'm really happy to talk to you about it. So, to start off, before we get stuck in, could you give us a little introduction as to who you are and what you are doing now?
I have a background in the military. I joined the regulars in 2009, straight into Sandhurst, and then commissioned into the Army Air Corps, flew helicopters for them for 6 years, a little bit more in ground role, and then I left to paint pictures, and it's quite a random changing career path, but that's what I do full time, and I raise quite significant sums of money for charity whilst I'm doing that, so it's going well.
It's going really well. I've been researching this morning before this chat, and I'm seriously impressed. I think that, I've married somebody in the Air Force who was a pilot as well, and we have this in our marriage where he's very sort of, scientific and he flies aeroplanes, and I'm very creative and artist. And to know that there's a person out there who embraces both of those and does them really, really well, if you look into your background, is really impressive. And also I'm slightly annoyed that I can't do it myself. But you are currently mid-exhibition. I've been looking at it. It is beautiful. It is happening as we speak. It is for Prince William's conservation charity Tusk. It's raising a load of money and it's fab. How important is this charity to you?
I've always wanted to do something where you use the art to give back in some way. And I think prior to my army career, I was also had a slightly more sort of varied career through Cambridge Veterinary School, where I did obviously a lot of anatomical training and a real passion for animals. Then into being a sculptor, and again sculpting animals. And I've always had that kind of background passion for wildlife and conservation. So Tusk really in my view, it's the best at what it does. It is fantastic at raising the funds, but more importantly, the projects that it picks to support them, it's very good at choosing ones that have a real impact in the communities that they serve. They're not just anti-poaching or rangers to prevent people from killing the animals. They're actually really invested in the communities and the human population that is going to help them do that. I think it's really important, and the work that they do is really good.
And you can see it in your artwork is just wonderful. And like I said, the exhibition is still going by the time this comes out. So definitely everybody should go and look at it. And it is raising some seriously important money for this charity. It's not the first time you've done something like this. You were the resident artist for the UK team in the Invictus Games.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that came about because I'd done a live paint for the World Wildlife Fund, and it was it was experimental, really. We decided at their gala dinner at the Dorchester Hotel in London, I was going to get dressed up in black tie, paint a picture whilst everyone was eating, and then they were going to put it into the charity auction at the end of the night, and it raised I think £3,000 or £4,000, and then Help for Heroes were, as part of the UK Invictus Games team, were about to also host their gala dinner for fundraising for the team for the 2018 Invictus Games in Sydney. And they said, that's a great idea, can we have one as well? So there were some logistic challenges with it, and eventually decided that live painting it was not as good an idea, but I basically donated 3 paintings for them, and they were auctioned at the dinner. And this time the 3 together raised £30,000, and which was quite unexpected, I suppose, because they, as an artist, I was quite fresh out of it. I'd literally just left the army, but the response to the paintings was amazing, because I think the athletes in particular really felt that the paintings represented what they were trying to represent in the games. It was not about the fact that they'd lost their legs or arms or that they had mental health issues. It was what they'd done to get out of that. It was the sort of celebration of movement, really, and that was what I tried to put into the paintings. It really resonated with them, and so as a result, they said they basically wanted me to come out and do some more. And so I was invited out to Sydney and accompanied the team out there for the games in October 2018, which was just awe-inspiring, really.
It would be. What was it like? Because I've spotted on your website that you had painted Prince Harry, and there's a David Beckham one. Loads of questions about that.
Yeah.
But I know that for the few people that popped to Sheffield last year and took part in it and also were there to support it, it really was quite a profound thing for them and an important thing. How did you find it in Sydney?
It was just amazing, really, because what I hadn't really grasped before I went there was the mental health impacts, I suppose, and the amputees. And not to take anything away from the struggle that amputees have in coming back from their injuries and resetting themselves for life. It's very visible, and I hadn't really appreciated the benefit of the Invictus Games to those people that have less visible injuries. And so, but when you start working slightly more closely with the athletes and their families, because obviously it's a massive support network for them too, you really sort of start to get an idea about how beneficial this whole organisation really is and what it gives to them, and in order to help them give back something to each other and to society and back into their careers. So it was a real eye-opener, and it was a pleasure really to be able to support it in that way. Whilst I was out there, I raised another 20,000. So it was over £50,000 raised for the team in about 4 months. So I was chuffed.
You should be. It's such a comforting thing to do for a wife. I find it really comforting to know that that if something awful happened to my husband, there's this sort of support system that's still there, this sort of community that would happen after the armed forces, and I think it's a really important thing. And I think what you've done is really lovely and really important, and also quite exciting to go to Sydney and to feel that stuff.
Yeah, it was my first time down under, and so I mean, I was really lucky to be able to do it, but felt like I was able to give something back by the funds that were raised for it. So yeah, it was a real opportunity not to be missed.
Oh, it's fab. So it sort of slides into a question that I was going to ask you around creativity in art and how important it could be for the armed forces community. We are still, just at the end of lockdown at the moment, and I have gone back to my roots. I'm actually an artist, graphic designer. And I found more time and more space to be creative. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were around how important art and being free and being creative could be to the armed forces community.
Well, I mean, I suppose I take it back to how I got into it. I mean, I've always done art. I've always liked doing art from school, really, but I didn't train in it. And I was always intent that I was going to be a vet, and so my drive was towards science, and I finished my any kind of art training at A level. But the whole reason this business has come about is because I did art whilst I was deployed, sketching, doodling. That was, some people play PlayStation, some people read books, some people prefer exercise as their method of relaxation. I paint pictures. And so, but I wasn't painting, I was out in Kenya, I wasn't painting them for anybody other than me. And there's a massive freedom that comes with that, because historically, my artwork's always been very precise, very, very sort of correct, as it were. And I got a bit sort of bored with it, that there was no life in it, there was no energy. And so I made myself destroy pieces, or not necessarily just destroy them as a matter of course, but do something crazy and alternative with it for the benefit of experimentation. And I found it hugely sort of rewarding in a way, that you could just do art for the love of doing art rather than for the product that comes at the end of it. It's just that process of being able to say, I wonder what happens if I do this. And I think we have a tendency to get very precious about what we produce, and we lose sight of the fact that it's not the product, it's the production. And it's the production of it that is the relaxing bit. Yes, you might end up with a nice picture at the end of it, but it's the actual process of creating it that is the relaxing bit, and that is, I find, very rewarding. I made myself try new things. I made myself, say, I wonder what happens if I finish this watercolour and then I throw a whole load of water over it. What will it do to the paint? You don't know. You can guess, but you don't know what's going to happen. And if it doesn't work, the worst that can happen is it goes in the bin. And that's it. That is the worst that can happen. I always try and say to people, don't worry if it's not as you thought it was going to be. No painting that I ever do now is as I thought it was going to be when I started it, ever, because I can't predict what is going to happen as you carry on. There's a real, I think that's where the sort of energy comes from in the paintings, is that it's very much kind of make it up as you go along. And I found that it produces much more rewarding pieces than if you were just to have a plan and stick with it the whole way through. Maybe that's life in general.
I think that is a metaphor for life, actually. I was just sat here thinking how scary and out of your comfort zone to get that creative, that destructive maybe, but how actually military life sort of prepares you for that, because you can plan as much as you like, but at the end of the day you'll probably get posted to Timbuktu tomorrow. So there's only...
Absolutely, yeah. Or the whole nation is shut, or the whole world is shut down with COVID-19. I mean, you can't control everything. And the more energy we waste on trying to control the stuff which is out of our control, well, it's just utterly draining. So, it's a real... There are some times where, don't get me wrong, I'll be halfway through a painting and I think, I wish there was an edit undo button on this picture, because particularly as I time-lapse all of my pictures, and so I can very easily scroll back through and think, oh God, it looked much better half an hour ago. But you've just got to work with that. Whatever it throws up, you've just got to say, oh, well, we're here now. What are we going to do with that? And I've never been, when it's, yes, you go through phases where the painting doesn't look quite as good as what it did, 10, 15 minutes ago, an hour ago, whatever. But I've never been disappointed when it's finished that I didn't go through that process.
Which is definitely a metaphor for life. And I think if anything, has taught us that, I think, a bit of lockdown.
Absolutely. And if you'd said 6 months ago to most military parents, by the way, in 3 months' time, you're going to have lost your job, your other half will be working from home, and you'll be homeschooling the children, they'd be like, well, I can't do that. And I bet you speak to them now and you said, well, it was daunting, yes, but we did it. And we just found a way to do it. And I bet it wasn't the original plan. It's probably not even plan B or plan C. It's like plan Z. But life, I find, is just one series of problem-solving exercises, and which can be, depending on your viewpoint, can be an awful experience, or it can be really exciting. And I find the excitement in that, and saying, well, this door got closed, but these three have opened up, and it's a case of picking which one you want to go down, and then saying, well, how many problems am I going to encounter along the way? But problems aren't a negative thing. Problems are just things that you have to solve and then carry on.
But do you ever get frightened doing that? Because looking at your background, you started off at Cambridge University studying to be a vet, and then training to be a Lynx pilot. And now you're creating this fantastic artwork. You are on Sky TV painting. All of these profound and amazing things to quite a high level. Whereas somebody like me, or somebody in the military community, especially women, we seem to put ourselves into limiting boxes and don't really push ourselves that far because it's a little bit uncomfortable. Plus, we get terrible imposter syndrome. So I was wondering, have you ever encountered that?
Imposter syndrome, 100%. I came home from, my relationship with Tusk started in November 2019, where I literally turned up to, in fact, I pre-emailed the team at Tusk and said, look, I really want to partner with you for 2020. Here are my credentials. I'm not just, I am actually capable of earning this kind of raising this kind of money, and there's no catch. It's not suspicious, and this. I just want to do this. But then I turned up to an event that they were running in London, and met the CEO, Charlie Mayhew, there, and just so that he could put face to name. And at the time, when you're pitching, you are pitching to essentially a company. They may be a charity, but they have considerations of their own brand, and also of financial impact. And so when they turn around and say, oh great, well, can you show us the work that you're going to be selling? You're like, well, no, because I haven't painted it yet. And so I then went to another talk by Levison Wood, who's also ex-military, and he's just finished his Channel 4 series of Walking with Elephants. And I thought I'll go to this event, and I sort of get the lay of the land. It was a big event, lots of guests in a big auditorium. And I came back on the train, and I just, my boyfriend was at home. He just got back from, he is a commercial pilot. He'd just got back from working away for a week, and I slumped down in the corridor. I didn't even take my shoes off. I slumped down, and I was like, I don't think I can do this. Tusk is massive. They've got all these significant supporters that, this is just way bigger than me. And I had a massive dose of, it was almost humble pie. And I kind of thought, what must they think of me? They must think I'm some, upstart idiot that just thinks that she can, swan in here and, use the brand. And it really threw me for a couple of days. And then I thought, well, I'll just see what the fundraising, and it wasn't a fundraising event, but they were doing some fundraising at that event. And they raised a really great amount. I think it was something like £26,000. And I thought, well, my target for this year, this is pre-COVID, my target for this year for them is £75,000. That's my self-imposed target. And it was a kind of, right, yes, it is big, but I can do it. if I just keep doing that basic principle of problem solving my way day to day through it, and things are going to be thrown up. I don't know what they're going to be, and so therefore I can't plan them, and therefore it's out of my control, and therefore don't put any energy into that because it's out of my control. But as long as I keep finding solutions for the problems that are in front of me, then I'm just going to do what I can. Then came COVID, and what I had planned was, pre-COVID, was a 2-week exhibition on Pall, opened by a 350 guest opener at the IOD, at the Institute of Directors on Pall, high net worth guests, celebrity guests, charity auction, all catered. It was costing me a fortune. But it was sponsored by HSBC. It was getting so much traction in terms of the following for it. And, I was holding back tickets to make sure that I, had people there that if they wanted to bid, they could be there and bid. And so it was going really well. And then COVID came along, and it became clear very quickly that even if I could run the exhibition, there's no way I was going to be able to put 350 people in a room together safely. And so back to, is it ever daunting? That took me a month to, whilst everyone else goes into lockdown, and for a while I couldn't get any paint because everybody thinks, I'm going to get creative. And I didn't paint anything. Even though I still was finishing the collection, I didn't paint anything for 4 weeks because I had to completely mentally reset. I'm a targets person. My target had just been completely ripped out from under my feet. And I had to really think carefully about what the new plan was. Could I still afford to support Tusk? And basically do an entire new military planning exercise on what was plan B. And that took me a long time to kind of get back on my feet again, and it mentally, and say, okay, well, this isn't what I planned, but I'm going to make the most of it, and I'm going to problem solve my way out of it. I waited a little while for the initial shock for everyone to just kind of die down, and then thought, you know what, I'm going to release this collection in the summer anyway. And so that gave me the incentive. I put a date on it. I publicised the date. That gave me the incentive to actually finish the collection. And then, as it happens, since then, obviously the government guidance has been that non-essential businesses can open up from the 15th of June. So then La Galleria, who I'd originally planned to exhibit with, they approached me and said, look, we'll give you some financial incentive, i.e. a massive price reduction, if you come and open this show. We want you to come. It's a really good news story. We know that you are the person that could plan it in basically 2 weeks, and so we want you to do it, and we'll support you where we can. And so it was one of those, okay, can I afford to do it? Not quite sure, but actually that was a decision where it actually came down to, will I regret not doing it? And the answer to that was a very definite yes. Will I regret it if I do it and I sell no paintings? No, I'll have lost some money, but I won't regret not taking the chance. So really, some of these decisions come back to just a little bit of a gut feeling of, I think this is the right thing to do. I can't guarantee it, but I'm going to go for it, and at least I won't regret not having a go.
And that's so important for a lot of us. I know in the military spouse world, that's what keeps us going, to not have the regret of not doing it and failing. Did you ever want to give up? Because you've had some real challenges. A Cambridge degree is tough. Flying training is very tough. And now COVID-19 has affected your next exhibition. So how do you keep going when it all gets a bit too tough?
I have to say, I don't think I've ever been the type of person that has felt that way. I tend towards, I will do everything in my power to make something work. And as long as I can always look back and say that's what I did, that I did everything possible, then I can have no regrets if it still doesn't work. So, for example, that it's not all smooth sailing. It's been successful, but it's not. There have been some things that have happened along the way where they've been horrendously disappointing, and the reason people don't know about it is that I don't publish it on social media. But that's not to say that there haven't been times where you come back and you think, do you know what, I absolutely thrashed myself to get that to pitch that concept idea, or to be represented by this gallery, and so because you put so much effort into it, if it then still doesn't work, you have that kind of moment of, am I not good enough then? If I put everything in and I still didn't get it, is it, does that reflect on me as a person? Why didn't they want it? Why, is it because of the art, or is it because of me, or did they just not like me? And you go through all those normal human questions of yourself. But does that mean that I have, but that doesn't mean that I have ever thought I'm going to give up on it. And I guess I'm kind of more that if I'm forced to change direction, then I will. But until I'm forced to, then I'm going to do everything that I can to make the plan that I've chosen as the one that I think is the best. I'm going to put everything towards making that happen.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's imposter syndrome, and that little voice in your head that's constantly talking to you.
Yeah, and it is a sort of, it's not irregular that I kind of sit down and I think, have I bitten off more than I can chew? And the answer is actually usually yes. It's just that you kind of muddle through it somehow. I find that I would rather take a massive bite and work out how to chew it than take a nibble and regret that that I wasn't fulfilled. And I suppose I've got two sort of drivers in life, I suppose. One is that I never want to feel like I've wasted time. I never want to look back on any year and think, I haven't really done anything this year. I haven't achieved anything. I haven't done anything different. And so far, even in the last year or so of leaving the army, when I knew I wanted to leave and I wasn't, my career, because I voiced that I wanted to leave and I was deliberately running out my contract. My career in the army wasn't going anywhere. However, I spent every waking hour that I wasn't working for the army building up an art business so that it could hit the ground running. So that's that feeling of time is quite a driver for me, that I don't want to feel like I'm wasting it. And the other one may come across slightly morbid, but if I died, I would want loads and loads of people to want to come to my funeral because they're utterly intrigued. And that's a real driver for me. And it sounds really morbid, but the thought of people, of going through life and impacting enough people in a positive way that they respect you enough that they would want to come to celebrate your life, that is a huge driver. And it's something that I sort of have in the back of my mind, that how will people think of me, what impression have I made, and trying to make sure that that's a positive one. So whether that, if they don't know me that well, maybe it's just that they know that I've raised a lot of money for charity, or and if they do, that I've done something positive for someone else or for charity, or I think that's a real, I would rather have bucket loads of respect than bucket loads of money. It just happens that sometimes you need to make a good living in order to facilitate your goals to do good things. And so I have fortunately found a way to make money out of doing something I love, but as a result it can give something back to causes that I really value and care a lot about, and hopefully that can do good things in turn.
Yeah, because we actually have a responsibility to make the world a better place, and all the money in the world would be amazing, but actually it's the difference that you can make to other people that I think is really important. The more time I spend talking to armed forces people, the more I realise that's their joining force for joining the military at all. It's not because flying planes is fun or sailing or soldiering is particularly good, but it's because they can make a real difference to people, and that's one of the ways they can do it.
And interestingly, I think that's the point where I felt that I didn't want to stay in the army, because I just felt that I wasn't really, I wasn't able to give my full potential in the army. And I felt that because of the structure, which is not a bad thing, it's not a criticism, it's just that the army functions in a certain way, and I just found it slightly stifling to those of us that like to think outside the box and say, well, I know that we've done it like this for 20 years, but what if we do it this completely harebrained idea? And and I understand why people don't warm to that method. But I found it didn't really suit the way I wanted to work and exist, really. And one of the benefits of working for yourself, by yourself, is that you have full control over the ridiculous decisions that you make along the way. And because I don't have children or family, then if it is a complete disaster, which fortunately nothing has been yet, if it is though, then I'm not impacting on anyone else's life. I just have to kind of pick up the pieces for myself. And so I appreciate that not everybody can be as free thinking, perhaps, particularly financially, as I've been able to be with my career change from the army.
So as we're talking about the army, I always have this, or the military, I always have to have this question that I ask people that are either still serving or were serving. And it's about military spouses and partners. And I am just curious to know what you think of the military spouse when you're serving.
Well, I think it's really easy to get the sort of stereotypical idea of a spouse that by default has to follow their partner around the world and maintain some, if they've got family, maintain some level of sort of stability for the family, which may as a result in stay-at-home mums or whatever. And so that's a sort of default idea. But of course, having worked with some of the athletes in the Invictus Games, they just wouldn't be on their recovery path without the rest of their families. And so there's a huge supportive, backing from the families. I suppose my experience is slightly different because, of course, I'm female, and in a largely male-dominated environment, which particularly in the Air Corps, and that's not before anyone shoots me down says it, that's not as a result of lack of recruiting or anything. It's just people don't want the job. Women don't want the job that I had, and and for good reason. It's a very long commitment. It's quite sort of more on the technological side, which just doesn't appeal to many women. It's just I happened to want to do it. I thought it looked really cool. So therefore, I was in quite an unusual position of being most of the time the only girl. And I found that I was in a slight sort of no man's land, because I wasn't one of the blokes, but I also wasn't one of the wives and girlfriends. And actually I found sometimes, because I was the only one, actually there was a lot of suspicion potentially from wives and girlfriends of this woman that was spending so much time, as a result of quite an intensive course, spending so much time with their other halves. And so without the ability to actually sort of explain yourself and meet them. And, you know, I think if only there were better channels for the spouses to meet those of us that were just kind of on our Todd, because do you know what, female company in particular would have been an absolute godsend when I was going through that training. But you know, I suppose it's also very different in that as I was going through, not many of my compatriots were married, and so we were just kind of living a bit of a university digs life in the mess, to be honest. And you know, we certainly didn't have many people that also had families that were living on the patch. And so I think if I were to go into it now, 10 years on, it would be a very different experience, because your colleagues have families, whereas mine didn't have families. And yeah, it's just a really sort of, I suppose I went into it in an interesting time, but I suppose as I went through, it became far more obvious how much my colleagues that you know, as they were growing young families, or those that I met that had come from other units and they had more experience in the army, it just became so much more clear how much they needed the support and the backing that they got from their spouses. It just wouldn't function without them. It just wouldn't work. And yeah, it's not a job I could do. I don't think I could be a military spouse, because I suppose there's an element of me that's quite selfish sometimes, and it has to be quite selfless to be a spouse, and just kind of take it on the chin, as you know, as we were discussing briefly earlier. Just the army and the military has a habit of saying, oh, by the way, next week you're going to be on the other side of the world, and you've got to take your house and your family there with you. And the amount of rubbish that families have to put up with is quite significant, and I don't think I could do it. So all credit to those that do.
Thanks. We just it was an accident, completely fell into it, fell in love. And now it is literally, like you said earlier, problem solving. I think we all sort of got slightly tricked and fell in love. And there just isn't a choice now. I think you either
and it is that problem solving thing. You know, if the problems, it just happens, are presented by the military rather than by, you know, other aspects of life, and they just tend to be thrown up a bit more often, you know, roughly every 2 years, where postings are, you know, surprise, you know, you're off to Brunei, or you're off to, I don't know, Canada or something like that. And but from that point, it is a problem solving exercise. And I suppose the spouses do a lot of the behind the scenes management of, yes, it's all very well your other half's changing job, but actually all the planning's done for them. And the spouses have to kind of do that exercise on behalf of the family to say, yeah, fine, we're going to Canada and a house might be provided, but how am I going to get the kids physically ready for this, mentally ready for it? How am I getting myself ready for it? How am I going to move all the stuff? How am I going to prepare the wider family? And I think there's probably a lot behind the scenes that goes on that people wouldn't necessarily realise, but it is back to that problem solving exercise. How do you do it? And yeah, daily.
We're very tough. People say that we're resilient, but I don't think it's resilience. I just don't think that there is a choice anymore. It's just the way it has to be done sometimes, which is a shame. But that's why it's really important that we have our own thing as well. So that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast, and share people like you who are doing amazing things so that other people know that they can do it as well. But also things like the network that we're doing together to connect people, to show that yes, it's a bit sucky, and yet everything's all a bit last minute, but actually we're all in it together, and we're all just sort of sucking up and trying to do our best out of this crazy life that we've all married into. Foolishly got tricked into it, but it's good fun. It is good fun. It keeps me on my toes anyway. So, gosh, going back to your amazing exhibition, you are rocking it at the moment. After this, what is the plan? Where do you see yourself heading? What is the plan for the next few years?
I don't know. And, that's the honest truth. And I get asked that question quite a lot, what's the goal? What's the 5-year plan? What's the 10-year plan? But crikey, if I'd been asked that question 5 years ago, I'm actually a little bit wary of making too many plans, because a bit like with painting pictures, if you get too wrapped up in your original plan, you'll lose any flexibility to do something crazy and unusual, because, but that wasn't part of my plan. And so I don't know. I tend to I have a rough idea year to year. This year's plan was, I'm going to run a summer exhibition, I'm going to do a big opener, and I'm going to support Tusk. That was and therefore the so what's of that come right. So I have to paint a collection of pictures. I have to prepare for this show and do all the sort of event management side of it. I have to learn how to use a few various bits of software in order to do the social media side. Yesterday we were doing script writing because I'm doing some filming this week, and it, but in terms of what happens after the exhibition, I don't know, because I don't know what's going to happen as an opportunity as the result of the exhibition. So you just kind of say, well, what I do have in mind is that I'd like some time off. I always kind of give myself a month where I don't paint. Well, it's not that I don't paint, it's just that I'm not painting for anybody or for anything. I just paint stuff, because back to what I was saying before, it's not the product, it's the production that I find relaxing. And so, a sort of no pressure, paint because you like it type period of time. And then, but beyond that, it could well be that I do another smaller collection for the winter. Tusk is obviously not going to come out of this, fundraising challenge quickly, nor is anybody. But we don't know when we're going to be out of COVID yet. We don't know if and when there'll be a vaccine. We don't know if there is a vaccine or if there isn't a vaccine. At what point will people be comfortable about being in a room at an event? So I don't know whether I can host events. I don't know whether at the moment, I don't know whether this exhibition is, going to be overall successful. And so until you have all that information, you can't really make a plan. But I'm okay with that. I kind of, I'll just sort of muddle through it. And if with that flexibility, armed with that flexibility, I think you can be ever so creative by saying, well, everyone's in the same position where we're just having to think outside the box, and it's already brought masses of opportunities as a result of going into lockdown. So it's definitely going to bring some more. We just don't know what they are yet.
Which is a really honest and positive way of thinking about it, I think, because yes, there will be opportunities. There has to be.
There always are. You just have to look for them, and they're not going to land at your feet. That you have to seek them out. And people often, I think one of the things I can get very frustrated and, depending on my mood, annoyed with, is when people say, oh, you're so lucky, you get to sit and paint pictures and make a living from painting pictures. Like, if you think that's all I do, you've missed the point. And yes, I think the luck has come out of the fact that I think I've always been able to draw. I've always found that easy. But even to the point of developing a style, that's not come through luck. That's come through practice and work, and working out which pieces are saleable and which pieces I enjoy painting, and developing a style and a brand and whatever. But the effort and the work that goes on in order to make this function as a business, it takes time, it takes energy, it takes effort, and it takes real sort of blood, sweat and tears. To set up this exhibition in COVID times, so many things have changed. I can't, for example, I can't get a van delivered to Winchester. I have to drive first 20 miles in order to go and get a van to go and get it. I can't stay in London because I would usually stay in London for 2 weeks, but I can't because the hospitality sector isn't allowed to open until the 4th of July. So I'm going to have to commute. I can't get my helpers that I would usually have because we have to social distance, and I can't travel in the same vehicle as them. And so it is effort, and it is toil, and it is, I think that's the one thing that people say sometimes, where they don't really have an idea of how much it takes to build a business like this and take those risks. And yes, there might be all sort of smiling social media stories about it, but that is not without all the background, oh my God, what am I doing? This is a total failure stories that I don't get published. So yes, we must keep looking for those opportunities and sniffing them out, and not waiting for, not sitting at home and saying, oh, isn't this terrible? If only it wasn't like this. If it wasn't like this, I would have done such and such. Well, do it. Go and find it. Go and, yes, it's not going to work this time in this way, but it will work somehow. You just have to go and work it out. And, be persistent, be hungry for it. And the hungrier you are, the more likely it is that something might not be what you originally planned, but something will come of it, of you being persistent and really digging deep to get the result that you want.
It's true. It's that overnight success that people have that's taken them 3 decades to get there. That's how it's seen by everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it is hard work, especially running a business, as a lot of us know. It is tough, but it is worth it in the end because we just love it, and it fits so well with our military life. But you're right, it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of hard graft. So we're sort of getting towards the end. I have loved chatting to you. Honestly, I have so many more questions, mostly about David Beckham, but I will stop myself.
He's lovely. He's lovely, and he's got a smile that'll melt your heart. That's all I'll say.
Oh, I'm just jealous now. Don't worry.
I just remember, so he was ever so generous with his time out there with the athletes and with the families, because of course you've got lots of children out there who are absolute fans, and he was always late for everything, not because he was lazy or just couldn't be bothered. It's because everywhere he went and people asked to talk to him, he would stop and he would talk to them and he would engage with them honestly and genuinely. And so it just made him late for every appointment. But when he came to see the team, I'm not a football fan, and I've never been a sort of a fan of celebrity as such. And so I was kind of like, well, yeah, it's really lovely that David Beckham, this famous person, is supporting it. But other than that, I wasn't that fussed. And but I tell you what, when he came round, and he is curiously good looking, and you just sort of find yourself, with your head cocked to one side, just going, it's just, I'm not even sure if you're real. Like, you sort of want to poke him to see if he's actually real. But no, he was in all seriousness, he was lovely, generous, and just so engaging with everybody, that he was a wonderful ambassador for the Invictus Games. And I can see why Prince Harry chose him.
I think in life, work hard and be a nice person is actually what will get you everywhere. And it's nice to hear that about a celebrity. And a little bit jealous, but I'll let you have that one.
Yeah.
Now, I've loved chatting to you. Your work is epic. Everybody needs to see it. It's such a shame that this isn't video and this is in fact audio. So if I want to go and look at your art or find out about your exhibition or find out more about you, where should I go?
Well, everything is on the website. So it's just www.hannahshergold.com. And from there, you'll find everything about the 2020 Tusk collection, about Tusk, the charity. The catalogue is all on there, which has got a lot about my background, my sort of career path, my support for Tusk, and it's got all the information about the paintings that are for sale. So what I've done is put out a collection of 24 paintings. 20% of that collection is going to Tusk. I was absolutely thrilled that Deborah Meaden has endorsed it, and we did a wonderful bit of filming with her down at North Cadbury Court in Somerset. North Cadbury Court were brilliant. They gave us the venue for free, and even took all the paintings down from within the ballroom so that we could put all my pictures up. And so I felt very privileged that they allowed us to do that. And it was wonderful chatting to Deborah and just getting her support for really what I'm trying to do. She's patron of Tusk, but she's a very busy lady, and so for her to take time out to come and speak to me about the artwork and really get behind this as a project, it really will do wonders for raising the awareness about the project, about the auction, and hopefully raise some significant money for Tusk.
And do go and look at them, because they are beautiful, genuinely, and interesting, and you learn about this amazing charity as well. So what's not to love? Hannah, I've loved talking to you today. It's been brilliant to try and work out how on earth a pilot can paint. I'm going to go and tell my husband that he can do it. So thank you for that. Is there anything you'd like to add before we finish?
No, it's been absolutely wonderful to chat. And I think sometimes maybe it can come across a bit sort of preachy, and I hope it doesn't. I just want to kind of enthuse people to go and try it, to go and fight for things that you want to do and the things that you want to achieve, and you can do it. You just have to really be hungry for it, and go and get it. Go and make sure that you get it, because you absolutely can.
Another thank you to the lovely Hannah. What an epic episode. I think we all learnt an awful lot, and I think it's really encouraging us to charge on with those challenges and to get stuff done. So thank you, Hannah. And of course, a thank you to the Royal British Legion for sponsoring this episode and the entire series. So that's it for today. I will be, of course, back next week with another inspiring episode. So I shall see you then.